This video we're going to talk about how to write a persuasive speech and how to give a persuasive speech. Here we go. I remember when I first started acting, I was in like 5th grade. I just painful pain in my stomach. I was so nervous before I would go on stage, and I wasn't talking or anything. I just had a couple things to do. I had to run around. But that's what they mean by butterflies in the stomach. You get so nervous, and they say, all right, well, this is what you got to do. You got to imagine the audience in their underwear. I was like, well, that wouldn't make me comfortable. I don't want to see people in their underwear. That gets weird. That gets awkward. How am I supposed to be comfortable when they're like naked? Jeez, it's no good. So, but what you can do is gain confidence. Is to be prepared. When you're prepared for something, it makes it a lot easier to do it. When you have muscle memory because you've rehearsed, you've prepared, it's a lot easier for something to go well. And some things simply just take time and practice. So here are a couple suggestions to help you. 1, write a speech. 2, give a speech. All right, first thing you got to do, you got to come up with something effective, organized to say, right? If it's going to be short, you want to make sure, bam, it's got a lot of power. You get to the point right away. You've got a little time to dig in and express an idea. Maybe it doesn't have to be a bam from the beginning, but you want to make sure everything that you say is effective and relevant. So here are a couple links. In a previous video, here, I talk about how to write an outline. That is the first thing I suggest that you do. You got to get your ideas in order. You got to figure out what you're going to say, right? Most people, unless they're super polished, super experienced, they're not going to be able to jump up in front of a group and just be able to give a speech, right? Takes practice, takes time, takes getting your ideas in order, figuring out what you're going to say and what you're not going to say. Well, that's an outline, right? That'll help you to do that. Okay, also, another video. I think it's up here somewhere. I also talk about how to construct an argument. This goes along with outlining, not just figuring out what you're going to say or the order you're going to say it, but a really effective structure to say it. So here are the kinds of things that you want to think about. 1, your introduction. Your introduction, you're going to want to introduce the issue, the topic that you're talking about, and in that introduction, you want to make your main point. This is really common stuff when it comes to an outline. It's also super important when you're trying to be persuasive, because how are you supposed to persuade someone if they don't know what you want them to do? And if you're persuading someone, you want to change what they think, feel, or believe. You want them to act. And so it has to be clear what you're asking them to do, and it's very effective to do that towards the beginning, right? So you have your introduction, and then bam, you hit it. In writing, we call that a thesis statement. But that's what you want to do. Okay, following that, you want to give your evidence, your examples to back up and support what you want them to do. Now, there's a lot of different ways to do this. We can call these rhetorical strategies. We can call this organizational techniques. We can call this whatever. It's the logic. It's the way you present your idea. So let's talk about some really common ways to present ideas or common strategies. We've got cause and effect, we've got problem solution, we've got compare and contrast. Compare and contrast is probably one of the easier ones for people to latch onto. Compare, you talk about how things are similar. Contrast, you talk about how they're different, right? And that might be really effective when you're talking about a decision between good and bad. Well, these are good, or they're similar like this, or they're different like this, and maybe those differences are good or bad or whatever, and you dig into it. This is really effective when you're presenting your case, assuming you've got thought out things to say, which you can figure out again in your outline. Okay, let's talk about cause and effect. If you want to be persuasive and you want to say, all right, we don't want to do this because this will happen, you're setting up for cause and effect. So like, all right, so we have this thing that happened and it led to this bad thing, so we want to avoid this thing that caused it, cause and effect. Or you want to do the opposite. You're like, okay, we want this good thing to happen, and here's an example from the past where this happened and then good thing happened. So if we want good thing to happen, we have to do the thing that causes it. Again, cause and effect is very persuasive. You're giving a logical explanation and you're backing it up with evidence. Problem solution, really similar to the other two, except that instead of talking about cause and effect, you're talking about, all right, we have this problem over here. And maybe you set that up. Maybe this is the kind of thing you're doing in your introduction. You're saying, all right, this problem exists. You're explaining how it exists and how bad it is, right? And then you say, okay, this is how we fix it. And then you give your solution. Now you may see how some of these kind of overlap. You could probably mix them quite a bit. You can talk about cause and effect, like, okay, so there's this bad thing, right? You're setting up problem solution. There's this bad thing. It's people are starving in the world. It's people are hungry, and we got to feed the people. Okay, and so you're talking about this problem is we're not growing enough food. There's famine. There's whatever evidence you're giving, right? And you say, what causes it is we've got this over here. In this country, they don't have rain. We do whatever, and so you're setting up cause and effect. You're presenting effective information. You're setting up for maybe the solution. So cause and effect, maybe you're using to set up your problem, and then boom, you're going to hit them with the solution. There's a million different ways to kind of wrap this around. What you got to do is kind of figure out what works for you. Okay, so we're trying to go fast. I hope this helps. If that didn't make sense, maybe go back, look at it again, hopefully, or ask me questions in the comments below. All right, so those are 3 of a million different ways to present information. What's important is that whatever you're presenting makes sense. And part of something making sense is taking out things that aren't relevant. So even if you have a really good point to make, if it doesn't help you make the point that you're trying to convince people to follow, then just leave it out. It's going to muddy up the water. It's going to confuse your audience, and it's not going to help. Okay? So let's talk about, all right, so you came up with a bunch of ideas, you outlined because you watched the video, and then you constructed arguments because you watched the video, and you put it all together, and it's very logical, it's organized. Now, how do you actually get up in front of a group and talk? Okay. Things that you probably want to do is you want to find something to do with your body. Okay? If you're the kind of person who moves around a lot, and you kind of fidget, maybe you kind of, you're going to hold onto your shirt or something like that, maybe you want to find something to do with your hands so that you don't look nervous. Maybe you've got some sort of stand in front of you, and you're like, holding your feet kind of awkward, and you're kind of leaning, and you're doing these things that we don't pay attention to because we are thinking about what we're saying, and we don't realize what our body is doing. And our body can be very distracting when we're trying to give a speech, because we might be saying one thing and it might be brilliant, it might be super organized, and all people think is like, what is that person doing? They have to go to the bathroom. Because like, wait, then go. Don't want to be mean or anything. So you got to think about your body. When I first started acting, I still do this, 7th grade, my teacher's like, whoa, hey, you got to stop moving. You got to just stand still. I was like, what? It's like, well, you keep doing this. You keep going back and forth. And my students don't notice I still do this, and I'm aware of it. And it was like, yeah, whatever. But if you are performing and everyone's staring at you, movements have to be deliberate. They have to be on purpose. And so it helps if the first time you're giving your speech is not the first time you practiced it in all the ways that you would, stand up, say it out loud. Don't just think it in your head. Don't just sit in a chair because like, well, I kind of want to do this. I want to do this. I want to do this. No, figure it out. Walk through it. You're developing a muscle memory, and it's getting easier to follow through with what you want to do, because there's no substitute for practice. Okay, so you're standing up, you're figuring out, you figured out what you do with your body, and maybe you're talking with your hands, or maybe you're holding your hips, or maybe you're holding something in your hands so you don't do crazy things. You figured out your body language. Now you got to figure out how to talk to a group. you got to talk loud enough so that people can hear you. This is also a problem I've had in the past, right? Okay, so right here, right underneath your lungs, we got a muscle called the diaphragm. If you are like stool. Okay, if you are like squishing that muscle because you're sitting down, it makes it harder to push on that muscle to push air out of your lungs so you can talk to someone who's way far away without sounding like you're screaming at them, right? Have you ever had those teachers that all they do is scream? And it's not that they're mad, it's just they're trying to get loud enough for people to hear them. Diaphragm. Use your diaphragm. How do you practice using your diaphragm? Well, okay. Stand up and feel the difference. Try to talk from your stomach. It's a weird thing, right? So, well, my mouth's up here. My mouth's up here. No. Talk from your stomach. Okay, so as you talk, see how long you can talk without taking a breath, and you really start to feel this muscle right here. And that's where you want to push. You want to be able to talk from here, so you're pushing air out without like straining your throat and without just screaming. It helps. Okay, another thing, face your audience. It's okay to move. You can move, but what you want to do is making sure that your body is facing them. If you're looking away, you're giving them the wrong message, plus they can't hear you, right? You want to face them, maybe even plant your feet, boom, so that you can speak from here. Your hands are focused, you've got something to say, you're organized, and you're ready to talk, and now they're ready to listen. Yeah, I hope. Anyway, here are a couple quick things. I hope this is helpful. If you like this video, please like it. If you have questions, please ask in the comments below, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.